Hey guys, so I want to do a video on this A squared A6. Now that might sound confusing, but A squared is the company and A6 is the model. So from here on out, I'll refer to it as the A6. But what the A squared stands for is Andre Thorburn and Andre van Heerden. And if you are into the custom knife world, you'll know that they are, if not the most prominent, two of the most prominent custom makers from South Africa. And Andre Thorburn has been doing this for many, many years and is well renowned in the custom knife world, known for building excellent knives with excellent fit and finish and actions. And Andre van Heerden also has the same reputation. And so when they got together and formed their company, they started producing some pretty commercially successful knives, and they kind of caught my eye. If you're kind of interested in African custom knives in general, I'd say head over to Tavares Works' channel. It's kind of where I learned a lot about African custom knives, and he's really into kind of all the makers from South Africa, but obviously you can't talk about South African custom knives without talking about Andre Thorburn and also Andre van Heerden. So I personally didn't dive into African custom knives for a couple reasons. First of all, before A squared, their designs, they were okay. They weren't my cup of tea. And the second thing is I kind of stayed away from, just South African makers because I was a little bit worried if I used the knife, broke the knife, had to send the knife back for a service or whatever. I just wasn't quite comfortable with having to send the knife back to South Africa. And it's still a bit of a concern of mine. I talk to just about everybody who's into knives, who collects the South African knives. I tell them my concern, but as an owner now of these knives, my concerns are getting much and much less because, to be frank, the fit and finish on these knives are amazing. And while I've had several customs that I've had to send back to the makers for this or that, the A squared stuff always comes out exceptionally well, and really I've had no issues with them. So I can't speak to the return process. I haven't broken one of these yet. Hopefully I won't, but I have used this knife quite a bit. So let's just go ahead and get started. I was attracted to this knife for basically one major reason, and that's it's a Tashi Bharucha design knife. Now, if you're not familiar with Tashi Bharucha, he's a French designer. He actually, was more of a hobbyist, collected knives, loved knives. He has a full-time job doing something else, and would kind of design knives, on his spare time or with his spare time, and he had done some amazing collaborations with just about every prominent knife maker, and I'm talking like literally almost every prominent knife maker out there. And he normally does these collaborations which are numbered to 10, and they're fairly difficult to get. I personally got a Kirby Lambert Roar, which is an amazing knife. And then, kind of recently he's branched out a little bit. I think he has a couple designs with Riat, and I think that his knives are because they have such great looks to them that he's definitely letting production companies use his design. But this was kind of the first, I wouldn't say mix between those two, but A squared is a custom knife maker out of South Africa, but this is not necessarily a limited edition knife. If you get a hold of Andre van Heerden, you can place an order for the premium. Of course, the standard knives are generally available at all the online retailers in the U.S. They're sold out now. But it was A6 was just a general model that you can get that happened to be designed by Tashi Bharucha. Now, I have mixed feelings about Tashi's knives simply because I think they look absolutely amazing, but I do think at times Tashi sacrifices a little bit of usability and kind of ergonomics for the overall, what I think are amazing looks of his knife. This particular knife, this particular model makes no compromises. It has what I think is an amazing Tashi Bharucha look, but it the ergonomics are absolutely incredible, and I really do enjoy using this knife. So in 5 minutes into the video, let's take a look at what I'm raving about here. So I don't use these two. So I haven't used the mini and I haven't used the premium, but I use the prototype quite a bit. So I'm going to show you the premium, and then I'm going to show you the mini, and then we'll talk about the review of the prototype here. So the difference between the premium version and the regular versions, of course, is just the material. This is a Damasteel blade, Damasteel bolster, and a Mokutai scale here. It's a liner lock, beautiful blue anodization there. This one does have a Mokutai backspacer and a Mokutai pocket clip. So when you get the premium version as opposed to the standard version, you'll get these nicer materials. And you'll get a 3D clip here, which I do like much, much better. So that's one way to tell if you have a 3D clip. That's a premium version. Premium versions often have this, look at this beautiful pivot here made out of Damasteel. And they also come on ceramic bearings. So, and they're also a little bit more expensive. So the feel of them is exactly the same. I would imagine even the liners are exactly the same. You're just paying quite a bit more for the materials and the look of the knife. I'm going to flip this to the side here. I'm going to show this, but I want to show everybody the size comparison. And I'm actually going to drop this down. I feel that the A6 is the perfect size knife, and I'm talking about the standard size. It's not too big, it's not too small. It fits almost perfectly in my hand. I do have pretty big hands, but I've never heard anyone say that the A6 is too large. The A6 Mini, and that's what this one's called, is a little bit too small for me. I noticed that when I open it up and kind of flick it, it at times will kind of slip in my hands, not give me the greatest feel. But since this is a YouTube video here, I do have to do a size comparison to prove that I know what I'm doing to a PM2. So you can see it's a full-size knife for sure, but it carries a ton smaller. I know the PM2 is a fairly large knife, but the A6 to me carries a lot smaller, and maybe that's just because of the thickness here. Let me just see if I can get a shot of that. Anyway, so back to the mini here. This is a Damasteel blade, Mokutai bolsters with carbo quartz handle material. Again, it's a liner lock. This one also has the Mokutai 3D clip. And you can see I'm struggling a little bit to get a good grip on it, but when I do get a good grip on it, it fires right out. And it will close if you give it a little shake. Again, I don't use this knife a ton, so it's not broken in quite yet, but we'll talk about the action, but there it is. Okay. All right. Like I said, we'll get this one out of here now. All right. So in my mind, what makes this knife special? This really checks all the boxes. It's extremely useful. I think the blade shape is perfect. It's got great jimping up here. So it's a very useful knife, and I do use this quite a bit. Of course, you can see this one here it's not a premium version, so it does not have the 3D clip. And this one actually has a carbon fiber backspacer. But as you guys may or may not know, kind of one of the big things right now are the actions in the knives. And you see I've broken the detent here, and we're horizontal. I'm just going to put it in the vertical, and it just guillotines closed. As far as knives go, this is one of the freest pivots on a knife that I have ever experienced. And I remember when I first got the knife, I bought it from a dealer, and I actually said, "Holy smokes, that's scary!" And he was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong with the knife?" And I just said, "I've just never had a knife that kind of closes on itself to that speed." Now I have some Lareva knives, and Jason overall makes a great knife. And his knives close without you having to shake them, but they don't close with the speed of this knife. Let's see, just I mean, you can hear it. If you put it in the vertical or you break the detent in the vertical, and it just comes roaring down. And there's really not much you can do about that. I tightened the pivot up a little bit, and it kind of just worked its way back into its happy spot, and that's just kind of the action of the knife. And I actually emailed Andre Van Heerden, and that's the action by design. And he said that's kind of the way they spend a lot of time working on making the knives smooth and making the actions, making them like people want them, basically. So when it comes to the action of this knife, I can flip this thing for hours. And yes, you can ask my wife. I can flip it for hours. And this knife gives you no rawness on the finger, no rawness on the thumb. I mean, if you told me to flip this knife for 3 hours straight, I would say no problem. There's not one other knife in my collection that I would say that I can do that. Now, Kirby Lambert makes a great knife, and I enjoy flipping his knives because of the amazing thwack it makes, but his detents are a little bit harder, and maybe I could flip his for 3 hours, but I'm not sure if I can, but I know I can do this knife for hours and hours. So it's kind of like a little sharp fidget spinner there that turns into a knife. So a couple ways they do this. As I noticed right away, on this liner lock, they removed some of the material from the lock bar here. And what that does is that when it gets to here, even when it's in this position, it just wants to, like the physics of it, it just wants to pop open. So you're never going to have it catch in a weird spot. It wants, so if you're like here, I mean, just release it, gravity will lock it open. It's really, really a neat design. So this knife wants to either be open or closed, and so the spring kind of helps move the knife open or closed when you're actuating it. So not only do you have an IKBS pivot here that's absolutely amazingly friction free with, I'm sure, a ton. I think they do a multi-row on some of their knives as well. I think there's a ton of bearings in here. Not only do you have that, but then you have the really, really neat design of that lock bar. And in case you're asking, I've never had a problem with any wiggle on the lock mechanism. So I've actually taken my hand in a cut resistant glove and kind of try to work that lock bar loose by wiggling the knife, and it is rock solid. The lockup is great, fantastically designed knife. And I'm sorry I don't have a scale on this knife, but it is not like your standard beefy, big, kind of overbuilt liner locks. This is a very carryable, very lightweight. If I were to guess on it, I'd say 4 ounces maybe. Of course, the premium is quite a bit heavier just because of the Damasteel and the Mokutai, but still very, very carryable knife. Now, the prototype is much freer than the premium version here, and you can still see how incredibly smooth the premium version is. That's just because I don't really play with the premium version nearly as much, and it's because this prototype is in my pocket quite a bit. So I'm not really sure how I ended up with a prototype. I was just looking to buy an A6, and I found this one. It really wasn't that much more expensive than a standard A6, so I picked it up. I'm not really sure what makes it a prototype or how many they are, so I hope it's not terribly rare, because that's a standard beach carry for me. I take it to the office. I'll work on the garage with it, and I'm not sure what kind of steel it uses. Actually, I think it's written on there, so I think it's M390 now that I think about it. I think it is M390, but I've been using this one for a while, and I have not had the opportunity to sharpen it. It has remained absolutely sharp, so I can't speak to the sharpenability of this, but I do know it does have a little sharpening choil there, not like some other knives, so I think I can sharpen it up pretty well. But no, this knife has just never needed a sharpening. I can simply just state it is one of the best knives I have ever handled. And while I love other knives. Like I have a big collection of knives and I love certain things about the knives. So for instance, I'll buy a Medford Praetorian. I love the fact that it's overbuilt and I really enjoy that knife and I have several of them in my collection. What I mean by that is this is one of the best knives. This is one of the best overall universal knife when you think of pocket knife. This A6, the A squared A6, this is what I think people are looking for when they're talking about a flipping pocket knife, right? This is slim enough to fit in your pocket and not be intrusive, light enough to carry with you every day, kind of premium enough to, go against the best customs that are out there. Great blade steel, and at the end of the day, really, really fun to use, really, really fun to flick. I would highly recommend them. Up for you one more time here. I have a couple more coming in. I've actually got 3 more coming in. So if you want one of these knives, I'd recommend getting a hold of Andre van Heerden. He's really, really cool. Again, the problem is they're in South Africa, so it's not like they can just make it and dump it in the mail and ship it to you. But the customer service has been fantastic. The response times are great. And the last couple knives that I ordered came pretty quickly. And the standard ones, like the prototype, hopefully will be back in stock in dealers pretty soon. I couldn't give a stronger recommendation for this knife. So if you like flicking knives and nice materials and all the above, I'd highly recommend it. All right, thanks, guys.